heard so many speakers today, but as I was working, I always made sure that I would take the weekends off because I needed to do something to keep me sane as I was working. Work, as you know, can get very demanding. So I needed a way out, and photography proved to be that way out for me. And eventually it came to a point where I would work and then go out and provide, and especially during the Corona period where I saw locals, tribals. I've traveled to Japan. I spent a lot of time with the Ainu. I've traveled to places in Thailand where they speak Pali, which we have forgotten in India. It's an Indian language, by the way. I've walked from Thailand almost into Burma at risk of being shot, but thankfully I'm still around, so that didn't happen. But yeah, so a lot of stories like that. But the bottom line has always been, what is the comparison between what I'm doing in a metropolitan, cosmopolitan city like Singapore versus what I'm seeing in some remote village in Chiang Mai, right, on the Burmese border. Lifestyle there is much better. It is healthier. There was this instance where I was in Tumling, which is the Singalila Ridge. If you you'll know the red pandas that you showed. It's famous for the red pandas. The ridge is basically a knife edge. This side is India, that side is Nepal. So whichever side you choose to tumble, you end up in that country. But on that ridge live about 7 families, right? And my guide, for lack of a better word, was someone they called the guardian of the forest. That gentleman was 78 years old, with cord failure, extremely flexible, no health issues, no blood pressure, no blood sugar, no joint pains, nothing. The amount of food he could put away put us all to shame. And that very same trip, we have a 78-year-old man like that running up and down, 60-degree inclines, 70-degree inclines, where if I stand, I'm quite tall. If I stand and put my hand out, I'm touching the ground. That is the incline. But he's a man who's running up and down that kind of a incline. And then we had people in our group who were 45, 50 years old, 40 years old. 10, 15 steps at that altitude, they are out of breath. Everybody with first you meet the tummy, then you meet the person. That kind of a situation. But yeah, so it got me thinking, what am I doing, where am I going? And versus these kind of people. The closest hospital was 4 hours drive downhill. And this is not any hill, these are the Himalayas. 4 hours driving down the Himalayas. If it rains, you cannot go. If there is slush, you cannot go. If it snows, you cannot go. So you basically, if you want to go to the hospital, fall in summer. There's the other times do not work. But that was one situation. And then you come to a city where people are battling breathlessness issues, panic attacks. You have people battling weight issues, pressure issues, everything you heard today, right? All our esteemed speakers have mentioned these things. That's when I decided to call it quits. I said, no, it is not worth the trouble. And I have shifted completely into photography. So that's a quick summary of where I come from, so that you understand that pushing buttons or an air-conditioned office, 40 degrees, is not a problem. So this photograph that you see here, this is a very shy, very secretive, near-threatened blue-banded kingfisher. This is a Malayan blue-banded kingfisher. There are two. One in Malaysia, the Malayan blue-banded kingfisher, and there is a Javan blue-banded kingfisher. They're extremely rare, extremely shy, very, very secretive. You don't see them very often, right? So this was in the forests of central Thailand. Although it's called a Malayan kingfisher, its range overlaps from Thailand into Malaysia, and it's slightly below. But to shoot this for kingfisher, you really need to. I basically had to get into the dense, lowland, moist, tropical rain. That's big, it's a mouthful, but dense, moist, tropical, lowland rainforests, where my guide, lovely gentleman called Ball, Thai gentleman called Ball, he said, long walk. Eh? I said, okay, long walk. We take food and water. I said, okay, we take food and water. And be very quiet. Obviously, it's wildlife, you have to be quiet. But he said it, I heard it, but it didn't quite register. So we took off around 4:30, we were on the road, got to the forest outpost, parked. I took off my tripod, camera, heli, and started walking. He said, long walk. I thought it was a long walk, so I started walking. That was the day I understood what an understatement meant. It was, that walk was an extremely strenuous hike through extremely rough terrain in a very dense as in you have thorns plucking at you, you try to squeeze in that ways and you'll have 4 things trying to prick you on all sides. So very dense, very moist. So you brush against something, it's wet. You walk under the trees, it's wet. There's something dripping. God knows what is dripping, something dripping, whatever. So you get wet. And very rough, rocky terrain. Visibility is very limited. And we walked some more. Finally I asked him, a little bit more. Let's continue. So we walked some more. And then finally after, I think, 2.5 hours, he said, oh, stop. Why? There's a very steep ravine with a fast flowing stream at the bottom. I said, okay, we need to go cut across and that way another 40 minutes. Okay. We've just come this way. Why couldn't we cross 40 minutes there? No stream. Okay. So here's where you can cross. That's the only place you can cross. So we came all this way here, crossed over, went down 40 minutes, and getting down was a big problem. So I basically got on my backside, slid down. There's no other way to get down. So slid down, landed at the bottom, stood up, and there's a set of very slippery, wet stones which takes you across the stream. And when bad things are meant to happen, they will happen. So halfway across, I slipped. And thankfully I'm tall, so I landed feet first in the water. But I didn't get wet. I was wet till my knees, but everything else above the knees was dry. From there, if you walked in wet shoes and wet hiking shoes and wet hiking socks, you will know what I mean. It is very, very miserable. So we walked 40 minutes, another 40 minutes, got to the point of the Kingfisher, sat down and waited. 2 hours of walk, completely wet and thoroughly wet below the knees. We are talking about leeches and very interesting things like that. But anyways, sat there and we waited. That Kingfisher took 8 hours to show up. So the photograph you see took me 8 hours to make when I was thoroughly wet, completely drenched below the knees. It's a miserable feeling. But that thing turned up for 10 seconds. And those 10 seconds were glorious. I cannot describe it. And that's what I strive for, right? So next time you flick a photo on Instagram, give it a moment, right? You could have taken the guy 7, 8, 4, 3, 4, whatever, 10 minutes to anything else. So it has taught me patience. This was a very similar situation where changing perspective, right? You've heard so many people talk today, so many different perspectives, right? So this was a huge flock of flamingos milling around. Now, you try, how do you focus, right? So you take a few steps this side, you go a few steps this way, you try and, so I did that for quite a while. There was like 40, 50 flamingos in a flock. They're not working. So I took a couple of steps, waited, and then I realized that on the bank opposite, there was extensive tree cover, which threw the water in shade. that the entire background became what it is. Almost black. It's not black. It's not jet black. It's almost black. You can see the water. So it threw the whole thing in the shadow. And I stood there. I was rooted to the spot. I stood there. 3 flamingos showed up. One was fast asleep. The other 2 were in a playful mood, bobbing their heads up and down. But they created that moment. Took a picture, and that's what you see here. So this taught me that just changing the way you approach a problem can change the entire frame, can change the entire perspective. You look at a problem very differently if you start looking at it from a different angle, or you ask somebody else for a second viewpoint, third viewpoint, right? So that's what this taught me. But it's not every time that you get the opportunity to move. Sometimes you're cramped for places. Right? Not places, space. You're really cramped for space. This was, this one was, yeah. So these images, ma'am was talking about tigers. This is Bijli. Each of them have names. So ma'am said T1, T2, T3, T4. Those are the forest department's names. These are what we give. This is Bijli. Why is she Bijli? Because she runs like the lightning. She runs that fast, and this is a picture. And if you watch closely, you can see her breath. Right? She's exhaling. So these are images that have taken a lot of effort, a lot of time, and they have taken, they basically represent all that I've talked about: research, study, planning, patience, hard work. A terrific amount of patience, right? And all of this boils down to a few glorious moments like this, right? It's not often that you see tigers. I've seen tigers swim, I've seen tigers run, I've seen them jump, I've seen them play with their babies for hours. Stuff like this is actually half the picture. There's Sambar on that side, and there are wild dogs chasing her as she ran. And this was, it happened like that. So we're waiting, Sambar feeding. She bursts out of the underbrush on that side. The Sambar take off running. And they're gone. And that's what, the Sambar honk and they go. The tigress runs, and then she's chased by some 15 wild dogs who were sleeping on the other side. There's a water hole. If you look at Tadova, the map of Tadova, there's a Jamunbudi water hole. So the trees you see in the background, that's the Jamunbudi water hole. And the tigress, one split second and she's gone. But that I got 2 photos. This is one, and there's another one. But these are a few glorious moments which make it all worthwhile. And like you said, the animals are magnificent in the wild. The luster of their coat, the way they react, the ears, the smell, you can see. If you sit and wait and watch, you can see them. You can see them twitch. You can see the tails twitch. You'll see the heads bob. So it's absolutely amazing. And they're creatures of habit. Like we are, they prefer the same branch. A particular bird, if it has a perch, it will come and sit at the same place, millimeters of difference. I've actually measured it. There was one bird I was videographing. I focused on the branch and left it. That bird kept coming back and forth, sometimes facing this way, sometimes facing that way. I have a 20-25 minute long video of that bird just coming, going. Same spot. Doesn't even move. So next time around, I focused on that spot. And the entire bird is in focus. Right? Somebody today was asking me, how do you focus? That's how you focus. You have to know your subject. Right? And if you love them, all the more better. So I was like, monitor lizard, but this is not my favorite picture. I'm on the ground, I'm flat on the ground, thing comes crawling up, across. No. It's an amazing picture. What do you mean, amazing picture? No. Look closely. Look very closely. And you're in his eye. So, if I look closely, you can see me reflected in his eye. So, I think perhaps he has my soul, and maybe I have his soul. But as you look at these pictures, uh, as you know, as you see these pictures, I ask you to look at them. Really, really look at them. You may not be reflected in their eyes, but there is something extraordinarily important and about these creatures, and it's up to us, like I've been saying, to keep them safe. And finally, in conclusion, I think I've gone way over time, but anyways, in conclusion, all the photos I take would not have been possible without the help of all these people. You know, some of them live in the forests, some of them have their own handicrafts. These are cottage industries. They live in the villages. These are the things they make. Those two ladies there are somewhere near Kutch. They're making fruits, bamboo fruits that we buy at railway stations, right? Khilone wala aata hai. So bamboo fruits, right? This guy is a weaver. So same person here. He's weaving saris. Right? So you stay with these guys, you understand what drives them. Right? There's no technology, there's no automation, there's no AI, nothing. He's using a centuries old device which still works. Right? The wood that he's using is very old. And these are people from artisans who are trying to keep their craft alive. But these are the guys who have the actual insights into what the world used to be, what it has become, and what it should be. So I'm very thankful to them. And with my family also in the middle, without whom I think it's not possible to take this up. So with that, thank you very much for your time today.